Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my patch 9.10 notes rundown. I'm Harry, Dr. Evans, and today, as always, just be going over the patch notes, my thoughts, what I'm expecting to see, and how I think they'll change the state of the game and competitive, and so on and so forth. This patch is pretty interesting because last patch was a pretty major one, so I'm not sure if we're going to see too many things popping up, but at the same time, most of the ERLs I think will be playing on 9.11, I think, because those start up again in a few weeks, so I don't think they'll be on 9.10. Obviously, MSI was on 9.8, or is on 9.8, and so with these events out of the way, you can then start to put some more interesting changes into the game as we approach the mid-season. So, just dive right into it. If we start reading down, we've got 9.10, the one where we greet the one, the only, the perfectly wonderful Yuumi. Yuumi, I will probably run down a separate video, but won't be a part of this notes. Oh yeah, also, spoilers because I got distracted and started reading into this before I started recording. But as always, I expect to see Vlad Riven nerfs. A problem with Riven, it's Guinsoo's. That's the big issue, and maybe her laning's like a little bit too strong as well. But we start reading into this, we're seeing changes to Yi, Riven, Vayne. Interesting that Riot finally sort of caving on Riven. I don't think that she's too OP in herself. It's just sort of Death Stance and Conqueror. You get too much lifesteal. She has basically too much synergy, which doesn't really sound like it can be an issue, but when a champion is balanced around one or two things and then you suddenly start adding in 3, 4, 5 extra things on top of that, it can get a little bit interesting. So interesting, they are finally sort of going, okay, fine, we'll nerf Riven. This might actually just end up being something just to placate people, because Riot have constantly been saying, whenever Riven is brought up in discussion, they say, well, actually hating Riven is an NA thing, it's a Western thing. If you look at the stats, you look at the numbers across most regions, Riven isn't really a problem. So maybe those are just placation nerfs. And of course, fine. Now, I really just want to see Guinsoo's changes, and we're seeing right here. Yeah, Guinsoo's and Conqueror. Conqueror may be a little bit too strong. The fact that I'm taking it on Kindred, whilst I love it on Kindred, it doesn't really fit her at all. It's meant to be for these bruisers who wants to get stuck in the fight. I feel like Kindred just uses it for a little bit extra damage, a little bit extra healing. It's a great 1v1 rune, but bearing in mind it's designed to be so bad for ranged champions, but Kindred uses it so effectively. It's an interesting one. Oh yeah, and of course, Riot making their millions with the Battle Academia skins coming out this patch as well. So Yuumi, Meow, brilliant. Brand, we're increasing his E damage late and buffing up the ratio. Okay, so it's, for mid lane Brand, what are we seeing? We're seeing 20 damage later and 0.1 AP. Yeah, as long as it's not a buff to support Brand, because I think support Brand is in an interesting spot. He's not exactly viable right now, but I think that's more of a meta issue. He just needs some light tweaks, and I hate to see it. Brand is a very oppressive champion at times, but his E also feels really useless, except for as a combo initiator. And part of stacking up his blaze, getting his stuns off. The only time his E is ever really an impressive ability is when he lands a Q then E to get the stun. So putting extra damage into it doesn't really fix that. It makes something more to play around and whatnot later on, and just gives extra damage into Brand's rotation. But I feel like Brand's rotation doesn't really need damage or extra damage, because it's something where you either one hit them or you don't, and either way you're happy. If you one hit them, it's like, okay, cool, I've just deleted something great. But if you don't, you're like, okay, cool, I've just chunked them out an insane amount with the Ablaze proc. I'm going to come back in a few seconds and do it again, or maybe finish them off. And so it sounds really weird to say about a damage bursting mage, but I just feel like giving him the point run scaling, this doesn't actually do anything at all. He still achieves everything he wants to. It's not going to make him a stronger laner, so he's just not changing. He's just like, okay, you're literally a Brand, you look at this, you're like, cool, but I really just don't care. He's strong with it, he's strong without it. Also, it's not Brandy is so boring. It's not. And obviously, it's an integral part of his kit, and he needs it. And it is interesting. He has the sort of skill shot, the AOE, and the point and click. He has a nice mixture. That's something I've always liked about the champion. But then the moving on itself is just really just like, you point and they take damage. You just click on them. Obviously, then you have the bounce as well of his passive for wave clear synergies. Like, it's definitely an important ability in his kit. It just doesn't feel very inspired. And again, it's not something you can outplay. So if it does end up doing too much just harass damage, if he just walks up and just spams E on you, there's not actually anything you can do about that, which is why it's kind of an interesting ability in that regard. Interesting in type interesting, not interesting in oh wow. Yeah. Alright, Caitlyn. Just buffing her apparently because Caitlyn's not too strong already. What are we doing? Just putting extra early damage on her W? Great, Caitlyn Morgana is still one of the best pot lanes around. Does she really need that? And I feel like Caitlyn's strengths aren't really in these... landing a trap is... It's really... Okay, so actually, yeah, Caitlyn's strengths aren't really about her traps. It's about her having constant priority to poke for tower, taking the wave clear and whatnot. Traps don't really integrate into that. So actually, by putting the damage on this, you're not making Caitlyn any more OP at what she already does. You're just rewarding Caitlyn players who actually play their traps. Because you've seen, like, there are some amazing, montages or whatever of Kindred players, not Kindred, Caitlyn players, chaining together their traps, doing awesome kiting, and you are going to be rewarded for that a little bit more with this patch. So it's a buff to good Caitlyn's, but to the rest, it's whatever. The big issue, though, is obviously Caitlyn Morgana, disgusting lane. Now it's just chunking you out for even more damage every time you get hit by the binding, so bit of an interesting one there. Caitlyn Braum, too. Alright. Fiora. This is her W assigned to do on-hit passives or so. Is it just specifically Braum and Cannon here? Yeah, W now blocks Braum and Cannon stuns rather than preventing them from proccing. So I'm trying to think if there's like any other champion that this would work with, but yeah, it looks like now that that's just really nice. Because it feels really bad when you're playing Fiora. Basically now, if a Cannon or a Braum had 3 stacks of their passive on you, I assume this has to work with... Oh, wait, no, yeah, because Sejuani's is active anyway, I'm dumb. Yeah. I was going to say, I assume this has to work with Sejuani, but Sejuani actually chooses when to stun you, so it's already parryable, and yeah. So Braum and Cannon, now if they have 3 stacks on you for Braum, 2 stacks for Cannon, if you riposte that extra auto or that extra Q, you will now eat the stun, as opposed to before where they just would not mark you in the first place. And then you've rooted yourself, so they're definitely going to mark you the second you come out of the riposte Veso, or Ripose. So that's pretty nice. Graves. I like Graves buffs, but this is just 20 damage onto his late game. Nice if you play lethality Graves. Personally, I am a big fan of the old crit Graves. And I haven't played him since his nerfs and since Storm Razor got reworked, but I'm a big fan like Fleet Footwork, Black Cleaver, then crit, Death Stance, that sort of stuff. Get that sort of tanky, Graves who really gets rewarded for dashing in and using his true grit. This Graves, this buff doesn't really care too much about that. It's 20 damage onto Graves Q, whatever. The champion's weak, sure, nice. There's not too much to say about it. Alright, Yi. The bane of my existence, I hate this champion, because he is good into every jungler that I play. Things like Jarvan he does really well into, because Jarvan EQ is incredibly telegraphed and it's the champion's entire kit. Kindred he does really well into early when her Q is on a short cooldown. On cooldown, he can just stick on her, especially with red buff. And then later on, you can obviously just Highlander to negate her slow, and so you can keep up with her. He can kite through her pretty effectively. Doesn't do well into Hecarim, because as I found out only like yesterday or the day before, if you Alpha Strike the devastating charge from Hecarim, even if he's already started the hop, the spell does not go on cooldown. So the second you come out of it, he's just going to hop onto you a second time. So that's an interesting one. But what are they doing? Oh yeah, so I read about this a little bit. It was they lowered the Q cast time. It was instant, and then it would just hit the same champion repeatedly if there weren't extra targets, and the E didn't give AD anymore. It was just the on-hit part, this is interesting. I want to read through the whole thing before I make a judgment. And then increase the satisfaction on the key parts of Master Yi's kit. Okay, there is no satisfying part of playing Master Yi. You just attack move the enemy team. Cool. Well, nerfing him in ways that will help out those who don't know how to counter him. That's me. Those with more experience won't find Master Yi significantly better or worse, but he won't continue to dominate in average play. He still does pretty well in high relos as well because of Guinsoo's. But all right. Cast time no longer takes 0.1 seconds to cast. Okay, so it's just instant. That's kind of disgusting, but yeah. Basically, that's just a straight buff. Obviously, it's also nice that it helps you dodge things better if you don't have the little route, the little cast time. Things that you might not have been dodging before, like skill shots, CCs that are coming in towards you, you will now be dodging those because you have that little bit extra time. But realistically, if you're a good GE already, then you'd be fine. Like, it doesn't matter. You would have dodged it either way. Yeah, if Master Yi has struck fewer than the maximum amount of targets he can with Alpha Strike, and there are no other nearby eligible targets, he will strike the same target again for 25% of the damage before checking for nearby targets again. So very nice to his clear, obviously. Because you'll say you're doing something like Wolves or Gromp especially, you're wasting a lot of damage by not getting the maximum bounces. Basically, the only camp that he would actually get max bounces on is chickens and in certain situations the Krugs. That's also good for his crab. And his 1v1, it's pretty useful for his 1v1, but usually you're going to be around creeps anyway, and it's gonna make you now take longer because you're going back in and re-hitting the person. I assume that part of the ability still takes the same amount of time, so you might actually spend more time in the alpha than before if you're in that 1v1, because it will hit someone, check, hit, check, hit, check. I don't know how long that's going to take. It might end up taking longer than it currently does to just hit like all 7 different targets or however many it is. I think it's 5, and because of that could be a buff, it could be enough because you're giving it's with Yi in particular, it's actually probably a slight nerf. Again, this is just assuming it takes longer because Yi doesn't really have cooldowns. He has his Q, and that's it. But other champions are going to be playing around their cooldowns and their trades, and by increasing the amount of time that Yi spends in alpha, you are decreasing the amount of time that he's autoing you, which is where the majority of his damage comes from. And again, this is 25% of the damage, so it's not actually doing too much. This will be useful in clutch situations, but there might actually be times where you'd rather not be an alpha. You'd be like, okay, I don't want to be forced to queue this person. I want to just auto them. And during that time period, your opponent's cooldowns are coming up. They might be able to trade back with you more effectively. Meditate no longer takes... that's way too much going on about that. Meditate, no cast time. Okay, cool. Again, you just want to start getting the healing out instant. You won't get the damage reduction out instant, so that's a nice buff. Wuju Style. The important part about this is that they've removed the AD, but they haven't put it back in anywhere. They haven't given it to like his passive stats or buffs the damage on skew. Again, outside of this thing here. So he is losing a small amount of damage here. Not even small. He's losing a decent amount of damage here because his Q's going to scale with that AD as well. What we got Highlander now just gives more movement speed across the game. Wait, hang on. It's moving from total move speed to bonus move speed. That is an interesting one because obviously he's gaining the 10% extra, so it's a buff in that regard, but it's now like bonus move speed and total move speed are two very different things. That's the difference between what. So I don't know. Say you have, what does he have? He has a really high base move speed, so I assume you have like 390 or something in the early stages of the game. Say maybe you've got like your T2 boots. You'll be running Ravenous Hunter on Yi, so you won't be having any shenanigans with Relentless Hunter. So I'm just going to whip out the old calculator. Before, so say you have 390 movement speed. The bonus you'd be getting is, it'd be 25% of your total. What's 25% of that? You'd be getting 97.5 move speed. Yeah, I don't know why I had to put a calculator in that. I could have told you it was basically 100. 4 divided by 4 is basically 100, yeah. 400 divided by 4. So, yeah. Okay, maybe I didn't need to calculate for that one. Whereas now, what do T2 boots give you? I don't know, 50? Was it 55? 50? I mean, yeah, whatever they give, it's... What do T2 boots give? I don't know. I think it's... Tier 1s give, like, 15... 25 if you have the rune, and then boots give an extra 30 on that. I don't know. In any case, I still don't need the calculator for that because it's just obviously going to be significantly less. You will be building up move speed later on. Things like the Zeal items are going to be giving you extra movement speed. But definitely at level 6, I'm pretty sure this is just a fat nerf. I don't know. Maybe I'm just really bad at maths, we'll have to see. But yeah, interesting one on that. But still, kill Gwynsu's, please God. Not kill it. Make it every 4 hits you get 2, something like that. Okay, Phantom hit's the problem. I hope that we'll see it in this cheeky section of it. Oh God, in this section here, the items there. So I'll hold my peace until then. Q cooldown now scales. E cooldown increased on Riven. They're lowering the cooldown on her Q. Interesting, but upping the cooldown on her E, definitely. Okay, cool. The Valor is like 2 lower cooldown. Valor, you look at other abilities that drastically swing, trades. Things like Abscond and Abduct on Silas. This is usually a dash and a shield, and it's a CC, and it's 2 passive procs. This is the game changer in your thing. Also, I think Kingslayer is like a significant CD as well. The Abscond is like 18 seconds. I think Kingslayer is something like 14. As again, Kingslayer, it's damaging them and it's healing you. Riven's shield, this is insane because it gives you a passive proc. It scales with AD. Admittedly, this is a level 1 nerf and it will stay level 1 for most of the games. At the very early stage of the game, it's not too much of a problem because you don't really have any AD yet, but it definitely will become one later on. Because I think I think in some matchups you might max your second. I don't know, I'm not a Riven one trick. But it's giving you a passive proc, it's giving you a shield, and it's moving you. So you're going to be you're dealing more damage from the passive, you're evading damage by moving out the way of it, and then any damage over time or auto attacks they're going to throw after you after that, you are also blocking as well. So it's doubly effective as a defensive ability, and anything that's sort of double dipping like that is going to be insane in trades. On top of that, she is a resourceless champion. You look at things like I don't know, let's take like Riven versus Malphite, for example. I don't know. Riven versus Gangplank. Gangplank Q is too short cooldown, but those are 2 champions that have like point and click Q, and that's a lot of their harass and a lot of, sort of how they get by in lane. With Malphite, it's not too important. He's still, his E for all ins is extra damage from his W, but the Q is an important part of his harass. If you're playing Riven, you have no mana. They have mana. They literally can just never use that ability on you because you will just Valor it, and they've lost mana, you haven't. Cool, you just automatically have won that trade. They are now worse off for trying to do something aggressive on you, and it has cost you nothing. So Valor definitely needs a longer cooldown. I think 4 seconds level 1, that is a significant amount, and I'm very happy with it because a lot of abilities will tend to sit in that 10 to 12 second cooldown range. So just by making Valor longer than that, you're having a good time. Also on top of that, the Valor obviously is just integral to her dashing around like a madman and running people down in the mid-late game. However, even though you are removing the time there, you lose 4 seconds off that, but you're also losing... so you gain 4 seconds on the Valor, but you're also losing 3 seconds on the Broken Wings, so maybe that part's not too important. Alright, Shaco Soul. Oh yeah, I heard about this one as well. You now sort of choose where the clone spawns or something like this. Yes, it appears 200 range. Oh, Shaco appears... Okay, so yeah. Oh, this is really useful. Does it still appear in a random place? There was a thing before with Shaco's ult where you could go over walls using it, because it would always put you in the same place. It would always put you to the right. And looking at this, it says random position used to be the... Oh, wait, yeah, I'm done. So yeah, you put the mouse somewhere, you basically get like half a flash or something here, and then he will face the clone when he comes out of it. Likewise, the clone will go the opposite direction from where you choose, and he'll face Shaco. So you can now much more consistently use this to hop over walls again, which is really useful. Obviously, because Shaco, you can then jump like 3 walls. Oh, you can jump 2 walls, but then you have the stealth as well. It's very confusing. You're going to have a good time. And yeah, this is just great buff if you're a Shaco player. And it makes the champion more interesting because the ult is really... What does the ult do right now? If you're AP, it does a lot in team fights. If you're not, it's useless outside of soloing Dragon. And that's literally it. That's soloing Baron too, because you don't get the damage reduction. If the clone's tanking for you. Right. Soraka. who's now a solo laner, by the way. I haven't actually seen her support too much, but her solo lane's not bad. So what are we doing? The movement speed is up, and yep, it lasts longer. Oh, actually, no, I don't think it lasts. Maybe this doesn't mean it lasts longer. It just means the curve is more sort of. I'm trying to do this right. The curve is more linear as your movement speed over time. Wait, is that the? Yeah, this is your movement speed over time. The curve's maybe now more linear, whereas before it might have been something like that. Still taking the same amount of time, but now just falling off in a better way. In any case, this is a straight buff to Soraka. Alright, what we got here? Tryndamere. E cooldown decreased. AP ratio decreased. I guess this. Why would you nerf the AP ratio? Are they just not happy that people are building Nash's Tooth on Tryndamere? I don't know. Obviously, lowering the cooldown on main slash is huge because Tryndamere just gets absolutely bonked by ranged opponents, and so the cooldown great. Also, the cooldown's already low. Like this doesn't look like a lot because it still looks like it's a high cooldown ability. Remember, you're also lowering it with your crits, and then they lower the AP ratio on it. Maybe that's just because they just don't want to do too much damage. It's like they're saying like, look, we're lowering the cooldown for you to use it as a mobility ability. Ooh, it's a tongue twister, but they're not lowering the cooldown so you can use it to actually win, to do more damage in trades. They're just doing it so you can take the trades if you want them, or get away from them. So that's nice, actually. Of course, this doesn't. The AP ratio doesn't matter until you have your Nash's Tooth. Okay, Vayne. I think Vayne adds a champion in herself is actually okay. A little bit too strong in lane, but not even too strong in lane. Just the fact that Vayne has always been a champion, and I feel like she should be, that loses lane. You lose lane, and then you scale into the late game machine. So whenever you have these champions that they themselves are strong, and this has always been a problem in bot, is bullies versus hyper carries. But if ever you have a situation where hyper carries are actually able to play the lane, then bullies just stop being played at all. I think you can have the opposite. Like obviously you have a problem where if bullies are too strong, why would you ever play a hyper carry? But that one's something that you can fix a little bit more with things like changes to the game as opposed to champions, and items. So, for example, turret plating, there was a big change that was put into like, hey, even if you're versus something like a Caitlyn or a Lucian, and you're playing Cogmore, you still do have a chance to be in this game, whereas before you wouldn't at all. So, I think that Vayne, it's safe, but basically because of turret plating. And any other changes that Riot wants to make in future, it would be safe to actually nerf her laning a bit, but instead they've just gone for nerfing the so she's weaker at basically levels 6 through 6 through 15 really, which I think is actually fine right now. She definitely is sort of just too strong at 1 and 2 items, and again I'm really assuming that Gwynsu's gets nerfed at some point in this patch. I think I read that it did, but so by lowering her strengths at level 6 and level 11, you're nerfing her at those time periods pretty effectively. And right now, 50% cooldown on her Q, at just 50% off of any cooldown at level 6 is insane. Another champion has that. I mean, I think Kindred has it when she's in her W, but at least she's confined to an area. It scales with Q rank, and it's not invisibility and extra 60 damage per or whatever it is. So nice enough. I like it. Buffing Zin's out. Oh good god. What do you think? Yeah. Buffing Zin's out. So this just really helps us clear a little bit, and also cures what you max last. So this is very useful for the Zinzao in this, just sort of throughout the whole game. Obviously, this is very valid reasoning. The Scuttle spawns later. Level 2 isn't as important. Zinzao's not as strong. However, Zinzao hasn't been too great for a while, but that does not stop my mid laners dying to him level 2 every single time he is picked. And I can't do a lot about that when I'm playing Ivern. So I'm okay with this champion never seeing the light of day. But as far as objectively speaking, this is actually a really nice buff. And very, very valid, very understandable, very nice. Just one of those little simple ones. Items, this is a good time. But we got Zyra first. plants no longer take additional damage from basic attacks that do not trigger on-hit effects, reducing the damage Zyra's plants take, especially from those that shouldn't trigger additional effects. I don't fully understand. Damage from basic attacks that doesn't trigger on-hit effects, so Corky's passive and Misfortune's passive, no longer deals a separate instant. Okay, so is that a thing that if a Zyra passive or if a Zyra plant got hit by a Corky or Misfortune, I can't think of any other champion off the top of my head that has that sort of on-hit in their kit, maybe Orianna, would it count as being hit twice? Did the plants think they were getting auto twice and now they don't? I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure some Zyra player can tell me. Oh boys, we're here. Oh, I'm a genius. Phantom hit frequency. Oh, good god. No one wants to see that item. Yeah. Alright. Phantom hit frequency decreased. That's all I ever wanted to hear. Oh, gee, I've got to stop clicking that. My bad. That's why I said make it every third hit. Even every fourth hit is still balanced in my humble opinion. Essence Reaver, attack damage increased. Cool. I want people to start building this on Jhin because I look at the like 4 Infinity Edge Jhin or whatever, 3 and a Rapid Fire Cannon, whatever you want. And I would just think Infinity Edge is so cost inefficient without its passive, which you're not getting if you're getting more than one. The actual item itself, finishing it, the 645 gold you spent to finish it, doesn't actually do anything. It just gives you the passive. There's no stats gained from combining the components. And so I don't like the fact that people are building multiple, because it's once you build one, you're wasting 1200 gold to build the other two. Actually, maybe closer to 1300. So I'm not a fan of it. Of course, I understand why. Because it's not about efficiency. It's just about literally having as much physical AD as possible. You will get that by getting those Infinity Edges. But I always think it's like, oh well, people should why don't you just build Essence Reaver instead as one of them. Is the 15 AD worth that much compared to the CDR that you're getting from the Essence Reaver? Because Jhin does have his spells, he does like them, and the answer is actually just like yes, the 15 AD is worth that much. You don't care too much about the spell. If you're building this much AD, obviously your spells are nice, your ult, it's important, but you do so much damage with your autos that you actually just don't care too much about the Q. You just walk up, you proc your Rapid Fire Cannon, cool, someone's on 100 HP. The Q's going to kill him either way. You're not worried. His trades are so few and far between. Not few and far between, but there's so much extra time between his trades that you don't really care about your abilities because they're going to, for very long trades, they're just going to be up anyway. Like if you're Jhin, you are never taking a fight where your Q is coming up twice. Doesn't matter if you have 40% CDR. That fight's too long for you. You don't want it. What you do want is the 15 AD because it's also, actually I think it goes to like 20 because of his passive scaling and whatnot. Is this going to make a difference? Maybe, but it is funny to see. The novelty is still there for me, but people are building 3 Infinity Edges. So, right, okay. Every 3 attacks right here. That's all I wanted to see. But I still think 4 is reasonable. Thank God. This item is the bane of my existence. I hate it so much. What else have they done? They've just flattened out the armor and magic pen are now just like a lot stronger earlier on. Wow. The other issue about Gwynsu's is like you literally look at the people who are building it. The Gwynsu's is meant to be this like hybrid item, It's basically built for Jax. Is his perfect item. And Jax hardly builds it. Unless he's like 6 items at 20 minutes. The champions that the other one is Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw really likes this buff. Kog'Maw's okay with this. He's not a fan about obviously losing the phantom hit part or having that increase, but he's fine with the rest of it. This is meant to be this like hybrid item for auto attackers, and you're like Vayne doesn't have a single AP scaling in her kit, and she's building this item. Maybe her E scales with AP, but she doesn't have any magic damage in her kit. So the magic penetration doesn't care. She doesn't care about the armor pen because she does true damage. She's wasting so much of the stats. She's building it literally just for the phantom hit. Likewise with Yi, he doesn't have any. Well, I guess he has magic damage in the form of if he builds a Wit's End actually, and I guess Vayne does as well. So okay, there's synergy between the items now I think about it, but for the most part, you don't really care too much about the penetrations on of other Magic Pen, at least on EA. The Armor Pen is a little bit nicer, but yeah, the point is, it's being built on champions that really, when you look at it objectively, it's like, do I really need this? And that's kind of an issue, because what's the point of having builds for certain champions if they're just going to be built on, whoever feels like it? In any case, big fan of this bit right here. But I've said it like 7 times already, but even I could see it being increased to 4. What we got? Hunter's Talisman. Cool. Pets now apply the... Oh, wait, hang on. Pets is a much broader term than I thought. This is not just Daisy and Tibbers and Shaco Clone. It is also Heimerdinger turrets and Zyra plants. I don't know, because I have never in my life tried to play either of them, if this was what was stopping Zyra and Heimerdinger being played. But I think Zyra did go through a very, very, very brief jungling period when her plants initially got sort of reworked to the state they're in right now, where they had this sort of... They had the changed health pool. And I think that it was sort of like, this is kind of fun, but it's not really that competitive. I genuinely have no idea. Maybe that this was a really big part of it, that the plants weren't proccing Talisman. Same with... the same with... what's his jobs? Oh, Shaco boxes as well. The same with Heimerdinger. Actually, but the one issue with this is that if you're just right-clicking something like the blue buff or the red buff, it's already getting hit. So this is only useful for if you can talk your pets into hitting multiple targets that you are not currently hitting. I don't know if that's A, efficient on these champions, and B, possible. There is a chance that this is a meta changer and it allows a few new champions to jungle. It might just be a quality of life thing. It's hard to say right now. But also, if we're talking about Heimerdinger and Zyra, that's the one, then Runic Echo's getting just a flat buff. It could be pretty useful as well. Elise Spiderlings, I think they would also benefit from that. But again, like, Spiderlings are just hitting whatever you're hitting, so it's actually not that important. Unless you're... The only time that really matters for Spiderlings is like if you're just walking away from the camp and they're still on it, you're just extending the duration of that a little bit. So that's nice. Conqueror, cool. Lowering the damage, lowering the healing. Nice. Does too much damage and does too much healing. So again, just flat nerf. Nice. Interesting to see if that dissuades certain champions from... I just realized a lot of the top of my screen is cut off here. I can still see this bit. Yeah, it's basically... Top of my screen is cut off by 1 click. Weird. But yeah, it's interesting to see if this will be... If this will change for certain champions. Like, for example, Kindred, is she still going to want it? Probably. Yeah. ARAM nerfs. Oh, changes. Cool. Who cares? And actually, bug fixes. I like to go through these because sometimes there's something important. Yeah, seriously, for example, this is actually a really big bug fix. Rakan's E, the second charge, does not cost mana, but you could not cast it if you didn't have the mana to cast the first one. So, say you have 60 mana. I think the ability costs about 60 mana. So, say you have 60 mana. You'd cast it, go to 0 mana, and then dash to someone, and then it says, okay, you can cast it a second time for free. Okay, cool. Can I do that? No, you don't have mana. But Riot, you told me it was free. I was like, yeah, well, it's not. So yeah, even though it wouldn't actually cost any mana to cast it, you just couldn't. So that's nice. And yeah, the rest are actually literal just bug fixes. And then of course, free money for Riot because people like these things. Yeah, I actually haven't looked at the Graves one. I haven't looked at the Yumi one either. Gee, that's not bad. But alright, that's patch 9.10. No changes to Vlad. Guinsoo's probably could have gone a little bit further. I would have actually just liked to see some Aatrox jungle buffs for no reason whatsoever, other than I just think it's kind of fun, but also just ever so slightly weak. But yeah, they've targeted some problem spots, so we're still kind of recovering from 9.9 a little bit because that was a very large patch. So understandable, but it's not too crazy. But I'm really interested by the pets thing. I think 7 times out of 10, this talisman buff means nothing. But those 3 out of 10 times, that could be really interesting. there's just a lot of really nice, just small numbers things, just flat buffs, which are always cool. You don't have to be too complicated with it when it comes to balancing this game. Sometimes you can just do small things like that. But yeah, interesting patch. Look forward to see how this will change the game. It's going to be a nice little bit of variation. And I wonder what's going to happen in 9.11. I don't even know when the official mid-season patch will be, but I assume it'll be 11 or 12. So, cool. In any case, that has been my patch rundown for this one. And then I'm probably going to stop recording this and then start recording an eco video. So, cool. Hopefully see you in that one.